It has been 1 year since the Vancouver Canucks fired Jim Benning. They fired Travis Green. They brought in Jim Rutherford and Bruce Boudreau, and eventually Jim Rutherford went and hired Patrik Allvin to run the show in Vancouver. Are the Canucks in a better spot? Let's look at the draft. Let's look at the signings. Let's look at the trades and see, has it been more of the same, or are the Canucks genuinely in a better spot than they were 1 year ago? On paper, they're in a better spot. They're in a better spot in the standings, but let's take a look. So, Jonathan Lekeri-Mackey, their first draft pick ever, has not been performing. He had 9 points in 26 games in the Swedish Hockey League last year, was drafted by the Canucks, and is now in the Swedish -1 league, so the Allsvenskan, I think is how you say it, and it's the lower tier league. It's like the AHL of Sweden. Only 5 points in 20 games for Lekeri-Mackey. Hopefully he turns it around. He's still young, but not a great look at the draft as of right now. So are the Canucks better from a young prospects perspective? Not really. But the Canucks did then overhaul their fourth line. Niels Oman, Curtis Lazar, Dakota Joshua, Sheldon Dries. 4 cheap signings, all $1 million or less. Curtis Lazar for 3 years, Niels Oman for 2 years, Joshua and Dries also for 2 years. Niels Oman has been very good as a fourth liner. He didn't expect to make the team out of camp. I asked this him point blank on Saturday when I was in the locker room. And yeah, he didn't expect to be here, but he wants to take the next step. He has been quite good for the team. He's 22 years old as a fourth liner. He has been good. Lazar has only played 16 games for the team, but he's been, solid, cheap. Again, $1 million for 3 years. You can always throw that in the AHL. Dakota Joshua has been, surprising. He's scored 4 goals already, 6 points. You're totally fine with that out of a guy playing, 12 minutes a night or so, 32 penalty minutes registered. He is a +1. Almost had a look on PP2 a couple nights ago. Joshua's been good, a tough guy who makes himself felt by the opposing team. And honestly, like these 4 signings, when we get to Sheldon Dries as well, 6 points in 15 games, by the way, he is a -7, but playing on that third line, guys like Connor Garland on his wing. He's also been quite good as just a fill-in role. Sure, he played for the Canucks before, but they did, extend him. He was an unrestricted free agent, so they picked up another year, 2 years of his services at just under $800K. So all in all, the fourth line, going from Mott, Lamico, Highmore, which was good, but Tyler Mott was sort of the centerpiece there, to Lazar, Joshua, Oman, Dries, all cheap, all under $1 million. I mean, you really just can't go wrong with what the Canucks have put together back there. So no complaints. We can get to some complaints, though. The Brock Boeser signing. Canucks have given him 6.65 for the next 3 years, or I guess this year and then 2 more afterwards. He will be an unrestricted free agent at that time. Of course, there are all the trade rumors about him. This one kind of gets an incomplete grade from me. He's putting up the points, but they're getting shelled with him on the ice. He's a -14 already at this point in the season. He was nearly a healthy scratch on Saturday, and with everything that Boeser's been through, obviously you want the best for him, but he has been struggling on the ice, and this contract is also putting the Canucks in a bit of a bind as they try to move on from it, clear some of that cap space. So we'll see how that plays out, but for now it's an incomplete because we'll see what they end up pulling off with Brock Boeser. And the other big marquee signing, when we get to September, I guess this one didn't happen until, was JT Miller, the other big signing where, again, he is a point per game, 26 points in 26 games, 11 goals, 15 assists. That sounds great until you read the fact that he's somehow a -8 with all those points, because at center, he was an absolute defensive liability. I think he was like a -11 through like 20 games or something along those lines, 18 games, something like that. He has improved. He's been moved onto the wing. He's still making those blind backhand passes. He's still a liability in the Canucks' own zone, and that new deal hasn't even kicked in yet. So this isn't going to age well. I said it from last year when I said, the Canucks just probably should move on from JT Miller before the trade deadline. I said it all off season, and they ended up signing him anyways. Signing someone like Bo Horvat gets harder. Signing someone like Andrei Kuzmenko gets harder because the team still needs to get better over the coming months and the coming years, where sure, they have the room. They can go back and sign Bo Horvat. They can go back and re-sign Andrei Kuzmenko, but that doesn't make the team any better. That just gives you the same team making more money, and there's no upward trajectory there. So this one gets, the Boeser move, the Miller move, each of them get like a C- maybe a D on the Miller one. Not ideal. Again, I love JT Miller, but it's a deal that just hasn't really worked out. Their other marquee UFA signing, though, Ilya Mikheyev, if we want to get back into the positive column. 15 points in 23 games. He has been absolutely fine. He's been playing really well with Pettersson and Kuzmenko. He is so fast. This deal looks fine right now. Who knows how it will look 3 years from now? It's 4 years, $4.75 million. But I'm totally okay with this one. The only downside of this deal is they didn't use this money on a defenseman because the Canucks defense is not very good. And they've tried to fill that gap in some trades, which we will get to. But the biggest UFA signing, folks, it's Andrei Kuzmenko, right? He is 23 points in 25 games, entry-level deal, so he's just making under $1 million for this 1 year. He's going to get paid, though, next year, right? The Canucks are going to have to back up the Brinks truck for this kid because he brings so much to the locker room, it seems. Like, he's so fun. He puts up a bunch of points. He's just loving life. I love Andrei Kuzmenko, and I think the Canucks really need to find a way to make this guy a part of their future, for the next 4 or 5 years. The problem is they're going to have to pay him a bunch of money to do that. So we'll see, again, sort of an incomplete on this one. We'll see where that one goes. But I would say having a guy like Kuzmenko in the organization does put this team in a better place than they were without him, at the very least. All right, let's get to some trades. 2022 trade deadline. Hamonic for a third. That third, they then flip for Dermott. Technically a different third, but they were 1 pick apart. One was pick 79, one was 80. So this, the Hamonic move for a third, slam dunk. Hamonic had no future here. The fact that they got anything for him was honestly surprising. They get rid of that contract, that $3 million hit. They go out, they take a third round pick, they throw it at Toronto for Travis Dermott. Again, I like this move too for a team that is, struggling and needs young defensemen. He hasn't really played for the Canucks this year at all, but he did play 17 games from last year. He was a +5, 2 points. That's great. And he should be back in the lineup, and that will be helpful because it will push a guy like Riley Stillman out of the lineup. We'll get to Riley Stillman. The other move they made at the trade deadline was Mott for a fourth, the best they could get. Didn't love it at the time. Wish they could have got more, but they weren't bringing Tyler Mott back anyways. And I think having the guys that they do have in their depth, I think they're doing just fine. That's not the issue that this team has. Next big move, though, it's the big one. It's the Jason Dickinson and a 2024 second-round pick for Riley Stillman. Now, here's the thing. Jason Dickinson already has the stat line he had last year. Last year, 5 goals, 6 assists. This year, 4 goals, 6 assists. He's played a third as many games. Now, he started off on a heater with Chicago. He hasn't been as good since. He is already a -7. I think his expected expected goals-wise is -4, which it was last year. It was also -4. And that's just going to accumulate throughout the year in theory. Now, Chicago's not a great team, but Dickinson hasn't been good, really, other than those 10 points. So I don't think he'd have a regular spot on this team. I don't think the Canucks would be better off with him in the lineup over a guy like Niels Oman, who just straight up stole his roster spot. So I don't have a problem with trading away Jason Dickinson. The problem is the second round pick to basically shed that cap space, and they get Riley Stillman in return. Riley Stillman, already a -6, at -4 expected goals-wise. And he's taking playing time away from a guy like Kyle Burroughs, who, in my opinion, has been much better. Now, Riley Stillman had a really good game on Monday against Montreal, but it was a one-off, right? Like, Riley Stillman has not been great for the team. And that second round pick, throwing that in there again, this is just a miss, right? So that's sort of 3 misses so far. The Besser contract, the Miller contract, and this trade, this Riley Stillman trade, all misses. But the rest has been pretty positive. They make the trade for Jack Studnicka, so they trade away Michael DiPietro, who has now only played 3 pro hockey games this year, all in the ECHL, and he has a 4.02 goals against average and 887 save percentage. Michael DiPietro doesn't have a future in the NHL. So moving on from him, like he was the 5th best goalie in the organization at 23 years old, and he's small. He's not going to make it. It just wasn't going to happen. Jonathan Myrenberg, a 5th round pick from 2021 that is doing okay in Sweden, 5 points, 21 games. He was the only real right-handed defenseman prospect the Canucks had. Keep in mind, though, 5th-round picks usually don't make it either. So maybe they lost out on a guy like Myrenberg in the future, but they do pick up Jack Studnicka, who I think has the value still of if they needed to get a 5th-round pick back to replace Myrenberg, I'm sure they could for Jack Studnicka. He's got 3 points in 9 games for the Canucks so far. He's been hurt for a bit, but he's been decent depth. He had that nice goal against Montreal. Good high effort player. He was a highly touted prospect for Boston for quite a while and just sort of never made that jump. But he's 23 years old. Who knows? He might blossom into a pretty okay player. This move's a B for me. And then the next day they trade for Ethan Bear. They get rid of that 5th-round pick. They pick up Ethan Bear, who has 5 points in 17 games, and he brings some speed, some dynamic skating to this defense that dies after Quinn Hughes, right? Tyler Myers not a great skater right now. Oliver Ekman-Larsson is slow. Riley Stillman is slow. Burrows is okay. Travis Dermott's an okay skater. We haven't seen him really play at all. Ethan Bear, though, is a pretty good skater. He's made a couple of mistakes, but a couple of really good plays. I think this trade is pretty much a slam dunk. It's a 2023 5th. They also get Lane Peterson, who you might not have noticed. He's a 25-year-old center, but good 4th-line potential depth. He's got 18 points in 15 games, 12 of them being goals in Abbotsford. He's having a great season in Abbotsford, so maybe he does turn into a depth piece for this team. So this trade for me, like an A. So let's sort of run down the list. The draft, maybe a miss, not ideal. So in that sense, the Canucks didn't really get any better. All of the signings, some good UFA signings, some good cheap signings, which is a mistake that the Jim Benning regime made quite often with those Antoine Roussel, Jay Beagle contracts, giving them a ton of money. They don't have any albatrosses like that deep in their lineup. And then the Besser and Miller contracts, again, they might be able to get out of them, but not ideal. And then on the trade front, they made 1 bad trade and I think 4 good trades. So I'd call that a win as well. I think the Canucks are technically in a better spot than they were last year. It sucks that they are probably going to miss the playoffs and not have a great draft pick again. But I think that most of the moves the team has made has slightly shoved them into the right direction, even though the players on the roster might not be performing to the level that we expect. Yet to be seen. Brock Besser, on the trade front, the Bo Horvat situation, we'll see how those get handled. But yeah, I would say overall, just the 2 really, crucial mistakes. Overall, though, I would give the Allvin Rutherford combo a B as of right now. And that's just looking at players in, players out. Let me know your thoughts, though, in the comments below. Make sure you're subscribed, hit the like button. You can follow me on Twitter at ParkersPucks. I'll have an article dropping on Canucks.com in the next little while on Niels Oman. So I hope you stick around for that. Otherwise, have a good day. We'll talk to you later.